Human existence comes with a very specific set of problems. Ancient thinkers observed that we are constantly battered by a threefold barrage of suffering: the physical world around us, other living creatures, and the internal struggles of our own minds. We usually try to treat these problems at the surface level, but the earliest seers diagnosed a deeper issue. They argued that trying to fix the symptoms is a waste of time, because the root disease inflicting humanity is actually ignorance. To cure ignorance, you need a relentless pursuit of the absolute truth. This search for exactly what is real and what isn't birthed the entire study of darshana, or what we call philosophy. Before you claim you know the truth, you have to prove how you know it. This required thinkers to establish pramana, the valid means of knowledge. These are the mental tools used to test and measure reality, like direct perception, inference, or verbal testimony. Figuring out the mechanics of human knowledge is highly practical here. Nailing down these tools is considered the only actual path to moksha, a permanent, final liberation from all suffering. For a long time, the intellectual status quo was held by the Nigama tradition. They relied on ancient texts known as the Vedas. These scriptures were considered either eternal or the direct teachings of a divine power, making their authority completely unchallengeable. Then, around the 6th century BC, a disruption hit. Groups of ascetics known as the Shramanas appeared. These were monks leading rigorous lives who began to ask a very dangerous question: what if the Vedic rituals are wrong? Deciding whether to accept inherited divine authority or to rely entirely on human logic split the subcontinent's thinkers. This divide created a massive intellectual schism, breaking Indian philosophical thought into two opposing factions. On one side were the Gnostic schools. These were the intellectual rebels who entirely denied the validity of the Vedas as a source of knowledge. The most extreme among them was the Charvaka school. They were hardcore materialists who argued that the only valid tool for finding truth is pratyaksha, or direct physical perception through the senses. If you can't see it, touch it, or measure it, it doesn't count. Applying this strict rule, the Charvaka wiped out everything supernatural: no God, no afterlife, and no soul. When asked to explain human consciousness, they concluded it was simply a natural byproduct of physical matter mixing together in the body. Another massive rebel faction was Buddhism, which brought an intense focus to the mechanics of human misery. They laid out the Four Noble Truths, detailing exactly how the cycle of desire and ignorance keeps us trapped in a loop of pain. To break that loop, Buddhist thinkers argued that absolutely everything in the universe is perishable and constantly changing. They pushed this doctrine of impermanence so far that they introduced anatnavada, the denial of a permanent self or soul altogether. The third major pillar of the rebellion was the Jaina philosophy. Their core doctrine, anekantavada, proposed that truth is heavily multifaceted. Because human beings are clouded by passions and greed, our knowledge of any object is only ever partial and relative. These three schools demonstrated something radical. You could construct highly complex, deeply moral frameworks for living a good life without ever appealing to an ancient text or a creator deity. Faced with this pushback, the traditionalists had to adapt. These were the Astika, the Orthodox schools that accepted the Vedas. To defend their worldview against the rebels, they had to build their own rigorous logical systems. The Nyaya and Vaisheshika schools responded by constructing incredibly strict rules for debate and syllogistic argument. They mapped out the mechanics of human logic, and in the process, the Vaisheshika system developed an atomic theory of creation to explain the physical world. Meanwhile, the Sankhya schools sought to explain reality through a strict dualism. They argued the universe functions through the interaction of two eternal realities: Prakriti, the insentient material nature, and Purusha, the conscious soul. Then there was the Purva Mimamsa system. They hyper-focused on the exact wording of the ancient texts, developing a highly precise science of sentence interpretation and language hermeneutics to preserve the effects of Vedic rituals. Following their own strict logic, Mimamsa reached an interesting conclusion. They argued that because the materials of the universe are eternal, and because actions naturally carry their own innate potency to produce results, a creator God isn't actually necessary to run the world. The Orthodox defense relied on an intense culture of public logic and debate. By answering the rebel challenges, they built systems so precise that their principles of language analysis are still used to understand the logic of modern judicial systems. When you have materialists, spiritualists, and strict traditionalists all claiming to have the only cure for suffering, you might expect an intellectual civil war. But in this environment, disagreement wasn't a cause for conflict, it was a requirement. Because every school had to survive the same public logic-based debates, they recognized each other as valid participants in a single shared search for truth. In the modern era, the philosopher Swami Vivekananda highlighted this unique cultural phenomenon, pointing to an ancient verse that captures this universalist approach. The text suggests that the different philosophical systems are simply different paths. People choose a route, whether straight or crooked, based on their own temperaments. Just as dozens of distinct, winding rivers eventually pour into the exact same ocean, these various methods of testing and defining reality all flow toward the singular goal of ultimate liberation. Reaching intellectual enlightenment does not require a monolithic, undisputed truth. It turns out that rigorous debate, constant questioning, and deeply opposing worldviews act as parallel paths to discovering the ultimate cure for the human condition.